The Canada-United States border is the longest international border in the world between two countries. The terrestrial boundary and U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The Treaty of Paris of 1783 ended the American Revolutionary War between Great Britain and the United States. In the second article of the treaty, the parties agreed on all boundaries of the United States, including, but not limited to, the boundary to the north along then British North America. The agreed-upon boundary included the line from the northwest angle of Nova Scotia to the northwesternmost head of the Connecticut River and proceeded down along the middle of the river to the 45th parallel of north latitude. The parallel had been established in the 1760s as the boundary between the provinces of Quebec and New York. It was surveyed and marked by John Collins and Thomas Valentine from 1771 to 1773. The St. Lawrence River and the Great Lakes became the boundary further west, between the United States and what is now Ontario. Northwest of Lake Superior, the boundary followed rivers to the Lake of the Woods. From the northwesternmost point of the Lake of the Woods, the boundary was agreed to go straight west until it met the Mississippi River. In fact, that line never meets the river since the river's source is further south. The Jay Treaty of 1794 created the International Boundary Commission, which was charged with surveying and mapping the boundary. It also provided for the removal of British military and administration from Detroit, as well as other frontier outposts on the U.S. side. The Jay Treaty was superseded by the Treaty of Ghent concluding the War of 1812, which included pre-war boundaries, signed in December 1814. The Treaty of Ghent ended the War of 1812, returning the boundaries of British North America and the United States to the state they were prior to the war. In the following decades, the United States and the United Kingdom concluded several treaties that settled the major boundary disputes between the two, enabling the border to be demilitarized. The Rush-Bagot Treaty of 1817 provided a plan for demilitarizing the two combatant sides in the War of 1812 and also laid out preliminary principles for drawing a border between British North America and the United States. The Treaty of 1818 saw expansion of both British North America and the U.S., where the boundary extended westward along the 49th parallel, from the northwest angle at Lake of the Woods to the Rocky Mountains. The treaty extinguished British claims to the south of that line up to the Red River Valley, which was part of Rupert's Land. The treaty also extinguished U.S. claims to land north of that line in the watershed of the Missouri River, which was part of the Louisiana Purchase. This amounted to three small areas, consisting of the northern part of the drainages of the Milk River. Along the 49th parallel, the border vista is theoretically straight, but in practice follows the 19th century surveyed border markers and varies by several hundred feet. In spots, disputes over the interpretation of the border treaties and mistakes in surveying required additional negotiations, which resulted in the Webster-Ashburton Treaty of 1842. The treaty resolved the Aroostook War, a dispute over the boundary between Maine, New Brunswick, and the province of Canada. The treaty redefined the border between New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York on the one hand, and the province of Canada on the other, resolving the Indian Stream dispute and the Fort Blunder dilemma at the outlet to Lake Champlain. The part of the 45th parallel that separates Quebec from the U.S. states of Vermont and New York had first been surveyed from 1771 to 1773 after it had been declared the boundary between New York and Quebec. It was surveyed again after the War of 1812. The U.S. federal government began to construct fortifications just south of the border at Rouse's Point, New York, on Lake Champlain. After a significant portion of the construction was completed, measurements revealed that at that point, the actual 45th parallel was 3/4 of a mile south of the surveyed line. The fort, which became known as Fort Blunder, was in Canada, which created a dilemma for the U.S. that was not resolved until a provision of the treaty left the border on the meandering line as surveyed. The border along the boundary waters in present-day Ontario and Minnesota between Lake Superior and the northwest angle was also redefined. An 1844 boundary dispute during the presidency of James K. Polk led to a call for the northern boundary of the U.S. west of the Rockies to be 54 degrees 40 unrelated to the southern boundary of Russia's Alaska Territory. However, Great Britain wanted a border that followed the Columbia River to the Pacific Ocean. The dispute was resolved in the Oregon Treaty of 1846, which established the 49th parallel as the boundary through the Rockies. The Northwest Boundary Survey laid out the land